I've been a massive fan of Naughty Dog for almost a decade now. I still vividly remember that excitement I felt being just 14 years old and playing through Uncharted Drake's Fortune for the first time. Every day I'd come back from high school, and it's these kinds of games that would allow me to escape reality for a while, not having to think about my real life issues, but sit back and take on amazing adventures. Not only is Naughty Dog responsible for creating some of my favorite games, I genuinely feel thankful to them for making a part of my own success possible. Uncharted was the franchise that truly got me into gaming, the reason I created this YouTube channel. I've had friendly conversations with some of Naughty Dog's former employees, even got to interview them for one of my videos, and through Uncharted TV, they gave me the boost I needed in the early days to grow on this huge competitive platform that is YouTube. All in all, it's safe to say that you wouldn't be watching my videos if it wasn't for Naughty Dog. But Naughty Dog today is a very different company from what it was 10 years ago. A vast amount of people, including many in the highest positions, have left the studio, while others came in place. Now, I'd argue that didn't have much of a negative impact though. They're in a better state than they've ever been. While their games are now of a level of quality that is close to unmatched, there's also another trend that has been on the rise. Certain ideological driving forces have become a bigger part of Naughty Dog's games as time has passed. I've long contemplated whether to make this video or not. See, I myself have been wanting to speak about this situation for quite a while now, because I also feel like it's something I need to be more open about. But it's such a loaded topic these days, and sadly I see most people looking at it like there are only two sides of the spectrum. Either you support it or you don't, and no matter what, you'll get some judgmental terms thrown at you from people who believe themselves to be on that other side. Speak up about it, and the ease with which terms like SJW and beta male are thrown at you on one side, but also homophobe and sexist just as much on the other, is absolutely astounding to me. All of these weak callings are often used by people who simply don't want to, or more likely aren't able to, come up with a legitimate counter-argument. I have no doubt in my mind that after posting this video, I'll get called certain names too. But I'm done being politically correct, to step away from the discussion on my channel out of fear for what others will say. I have great faith that almost all of my viewers, those of you watching right now, are respectful human beings. You can listen to both sides of a debate, and even though you may not always agree, that's fine. You understand that there are those who hold other opinions. It's really that simple, and I guess I shouldn't make it a bigger deal than it actually is. So, let's get into it.
So I wanted to learn more about it on my own, so I started reading some of these books. And whether we want to admit it or not, these are role models. And yet we sexualize, we objectify, we marginalize, and we reduce these female characters to a lot less than they can be. So while working on The Last of Us, I had this secret agenda.
This is a small clip from a presentation that was hosted by Neil Druckmann back in 2013, a few months after The Last of Us had just come out. In it, he openly talks about his thought processes and the many goals set out for the game. One of the biggest ones being related to this agenda he speaks of, which is to create one of the coolest non-sexualized female game protagonists. Now, this is in response to what he noticed as a game developer, that many of the female roles in all entertainment, from movies to video games, are being portrayed in stereotypical ways, focusing on their appearance more than any other strengths. I think I speak for myself and the majority of regular gamers that we honestly don't mind. We play games to have fun, to experience great stories, and who we play as has never been an issue. If a character is relatable, well written, and I can totally place myself in their shoes, then that's all I could possibly ask for. Whether it is Nathan Drake or John Marston, who physically may have more in common with me, or Senua and Faith from Hellblade and Mirror's Edge. I love all these characters because I connected with them, I understood and related to how they felt in various situations. Diversity, inclusiveness, representation, these are the terms that you now constantly hear when watching interviews with Naughty Dog or simply by reading the Twitter timeline of many of their employees. In itself, I have few problems with these ideals. There's nothing wrong with wanting gamers to respect people of all kinds. But there is another side of the coin. It can get a little ridiculous how much focus a dev puts on these topics nowadays, like they're forgetting that the quality and appeal of the story is still the most important goal. For example, I've yet to see a game feature a Dutch protagonist with an accent like me, but I've certainly never felt like I needed to be represented more. I understand that an entire game taking place in my own small country is not gonna appeal to the mass market, and so you certainly won't hear me complain. That itch to constantly push a certain narrative is to me a little concerning, because other aspects could start suffering from it, and it can sometimes come off as a little pretentious. That said, it's the developer's choice, and I'm not gonna tell them what they should or shouldn't do. All that I'm saying is, if it ever gets to the point where an agenda intervenes with the quality of a story, or it stops appealing to me, then my response will be simple: I'm not buying the game. Now, going back to Neuerdog, obviously to this day I've never felt that way, quite the opposite. I actually used to defend their decisions made in previous games. The Last of Us Part 1 subtly hinted at Bill being gay, but it never became a real part of the experience because it didn't need to. The Left Behind DLC built up to Ellie's kiss with Riley very well, and it helped flesh out a character just a little more for that small additional story content. A lot of people had a problem with Nadine in Uncharted 4, and I found those complaints understandable, though they personally never bothered me so much. Sure, she's another strong female character who leads a whole army and gets to beat up Drake in a sequence where you pretty much can't fight back. You could also argue that had Rafe led this army and Nadine was out of the picture, the story of the game practically wouldn't have changed, and so Nadine served little purpose. Again, I understand these complaints, but I liked playing through the various encounters, and it added an extra element of tension to the game. These discussions had been going on for quite some years, but I never took issue. That was until recently, when a few problems with Neuerdog arose for me. It started with a relatively small thing, and that was after the release of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. I remember the months leading up to its release, how I would joke around with some of my viewers and friends of mine in real life that the game would end with Chloe and Nadine in a relationship. It was sort of meant as a joke, referring to the Left Behind DLC, and not for a second did I actually think it would happen. The Lost Legacy was meant to be a small, standalone adventure, all about the treasure hunting, set pieces, and exploring the beautiful locations in India. That being said, we knew the background of both Chloe and Nadine, so it obviously wouldn't make sense, and it's not what anyone was looking to get out of the game. By the time I played it, I forgot all about that. I enjoyed the game greatly for what it was, and a romantic relationship between the two obviously never happened. That's when a few months later, I came to the realization that while Neuerdog left the topic untouched, against all my expectations, it seemed they actually wished they didn't have to. In December, the company sent out a Happy Holidays tweet with a piece of artwork made by one of its own employees. It showed Chloe and Nadine standing under mistletoe. They look down to the floor with embarrassed faces, and it obviously implies that they're in love with each other. It's probably just a one-off thing is what I thought at first, but it didn't actually stop here. Ever since and up until today, members of the studio are addressing the two as Claudine, a typical way on the internet of referring to a couple these days. But that's not all. They'd constantly share around specific fan art, for example of the two marrying, and I'm sorry, it just rubbed me the wrong way. That's not because I have anything against gay characters, I was fine with it in Left Behind, but because this is so clearly forced and done to indeed fit an agenda and satisfy a specific audience. Both of these characters had several relationships established in the past, Chloe with Drake and Flynn, Nadine with Rafe and Asav. Sure, the counter-argument that the two could possibly be bisexual exists, but it's so irrelevant when you take in mind that The Lost Legacy just focused on a treasure hunting adventure with a completely different goal and outcome. What annoys me so much is just because Neuerdog wants to push gay acceptance, something I very much stand for as well, they'll change around characters to fit their narrative. Some people may agree with me on this, and to others it might sound like a small pointless thing to complain about. What you need to understand though is that I am very passionate about this series. I felt attached to it for close to a decade now, and I hate to see it changed just for virtue signaling reasons. But this was merely the start. Look, it's no secret that Naughty Dog has been inspired by the extreme social justice movement that we see today. Neil Druckmann is a very big fan of Anita Sarkeesian. He's praised her work and even handed her an award for it, but I'm pretty sure that alarm bells will go off for many of you just hearing her name. She's far from someone I would look up to, that's for sure. She's a person who loves nothing more than to accuse gamers and game creators of sexism, racism, homophobia, and all the other judgmental terms that you can find. She was never a gamer, and a minute of research will make clear that she represents the complete opposite of tolerance and freedom for gamers and creators to decide what to make and what to play. This is simply worrying to me, and the more I hear about The Last of Us 2, the more I fear that Naughty Dog is about to go overboard with this stuff. There is already an overemphasis on female characters that is becoming more and more visible to me. First, we had fans asking for Chloe and Cutter to return, two fan favorites, but the latter was completely ignored, and what we got instead was Nadine, a character that few people even liked at all in Uncharted 4. Now we have The Last of Us 2, where Ellie has taken over the lead. I'm personally fine with this choice, and I think that most fans are too, but the way that Joel so far has been left in the background feels weird, because at the end of the day, both of these characters are at the core of this franchise, and it's what everyone wants to see. But while Joel barely got any screen time, other new characters did, like Ellie's new girlfriend Dina, and that other mysterious character, who could be her mom or sister. In pure Naughty Dog fashion, it's another character that was deliberately designed to be incredibly buff, and at this point that's nothing new. Last but not least, while Uncharted may have ended for Naughty Dog, the company made sure that Drake had a daughter instead of a son, contrary to what the original plan was. If another studio were to eventually continue the franchise, that's the one direction they'd automatically be steered into. Now, that's as far as the choices in their games goes, but the following examples revealed even more to me about Naughty Dog's priorities nowadays. You'll probably remember that pretty bad panel at PSX 2017, with a host that seemed incapable of asking the right questions, who didn't even know the most basic things about the gaming industry. PUBG? I don't know what that is. I played The Last of Us a year ago, and it was the first game I ever played. These were some of the mind-blowing statements that had me sitting there feeling embarrassed in my own livestream. I just couldn't understand why last year a guy who worked at Game Informer did such a good job of leading the panel for a large game like The Last of Us, but now we got this. Well, I did some research, and it turns out that the host is a popular lesbian vlogger, and really that's the only reason she got to sit here asking the questions. Never mind actually being a knowledgeable person who plays games and knows this industry, that's apparently unimportant nowadays. That same thing counts for one of the only male characters we've seen introduced, Lev. He's played by a transgender teenager who confirmed during this panel that he was handpicked by Neil to audition. That's the opposite of how all the other actors got their role, at least the ones I heard of, and trust me, I've watched lots of behind the scenes content for both Uncharted and The Last of Us. He appeared shy and likable on camera to me and was praised by the devs, but then I took a look at the stuff he constantly tweets about and I don't even need to know anything more. Here's the thing, every single one of these points I have no issue with on its own. Had they been self-contained choices, I wouldn't have thought about it for a second. But add all of it up together, and I'm sorry, but I also believe there is an agenda at play here, and I think it's obvious. Look, The Last of Us Part 2 is gonna be an amazing game, I have absolutely no doubt about it. E3 2018 was meant to be all about the gameplay reveal for the game, and it largely was, but what was the one long cutscene that Naughty Dog felt like they needed to show off before things would go down? A random flashback of Ellie kissing another girl, a plot point that may become essential to the story of the game, but had absolutely no reason to be shown off here at E3. There was no context provided, nothing that led up to it, nor did it have anything to do at all with the gameplay itself. But speak up about finding it an unnecessary addition here and you're a homophobe. Speak up that you'd rather had Joel remain as the playable character and the game wasn't made for you in the first place. I came across a tweet from Boone Cotter, one of Naughty Dog's own employees, and I found it so typical for this whole situation. He tweeted the following: "If you're so socially and culturally inept that the option to play a video game as a female gets you all worked up in a frothy nerd rage, my name is Boone. I make games, but not for people like you. Your kind is done, mate. Do everyone a favor and fuck off. You're embarrassing. The most cringeworthy aspect of all this shit is the ridiculous narrative that game developers are held ransom by the oppressive chokehold of the SJW agenda. Truth, we actually want to make good games, inclusive games, games that disregard your toxic gamer bro bullshit. It's exactly this antagonizing, hostile tone that marks the issue I pointed out in the intro of this video. Either you're with them or you're against them. There is no middle way to these people. Naughty Dog is slowly losing longtime fans with this approach, fans who would previously go the extra mile to defend them. I can know because I am one of them, and I've already seen many of my own viewers, massive fans of this company as well, say the same thing. I just hate seeing strawman arguments made up to attack irregular gamers, saying we don't like playing as females, that we're sexist, homophobes, or toxic gamer bros. Meanwhile, all of us grew up with characters like Lara Croft. We play games with female protagonists all the time, and none of us minded Left Behind storyline. Of course, there is that small amount of actual idiots, but it's such a small fraction, and most of the people complaining are doing so with legitimate arguments that are simply ignored and they're all put into the same camp. There's no need to always assume the worst out of people, that if they have an issue it means that they have the wrong intentions. The majority of gamers liked The Last of Us for its story about survival, the bond between Joel and Ellie, and the vicious gameplay in its brutal world. The more you shift focus to other elements, the less people are going to be happy about it. It's not that complicated. The majority of gamers are men. The majority of gamers are straight. They won't mind a character in a gay relationship, but they won't get excited for it or ask for it either. That's not in any way disrespectful to those who do, and it sure doesn't make them homophobes. The gameplay shown at E3 looked awesome, but what is the one thing that the media and Naughty Dog makes the focal point of conversation? Exactly, it's the kiss. Yes, many of their previous games had characters in relationships, but never did that get the focus at E3. I'm just so tired of it all. I used to be such a fan that I'd follow these developers on social media because of their passion for making games, the insight that I'd get that I otherwise wouldn't have known about. Nowadays, that's far from the focus. It's all about political talk and social issues. That's a choice and they're free to make it, but the consequence is that I am becoming less interested in their work as time keeps passing, and I find that a shame. I think about the Naughty Dog that I loved 10 years ago, how at no point I ever felt the need to question the thought process behind a certain character. You know what the funny thing is? Now that I did for the very first time, I actually realized how diverse the cast of the Uncharted games was all along, without ever feeling interrupting or taking me out of the experience. I'm all for freedom and equality, but I cannot stand the social justice movements that we see today. Contrary to what they claim to be, they are incredibly intolerant and forceful in their views. That being said, of course the opposite side also exists, and I despise the people that make fun of gay characters and disrespect people who aren't alike just as much. But what some developers and the vocal gaming community out there fail to realize is that the overwhelming majority are rational, intelligent gamers. They can disagree in how they feel about these decisions, but they certainly don't deserve a specific label put onto them for the way they feel. Most of us play games to have fun, to escape reality and experience great stories that don't strongly push an agenda but simply entertain. I can only hope that Naughty Dog will remember to make games for these people and to do so with their priorities in the right place. They still make some of the best, some of the most appealing and some of my favorite games out there. All I hope and wish is for that not to change. Thanks a lot everybody for watching another one of my in-depth gaming videos. I really tried to go about this as respectful and honest as I could, because it's something that's been, on my mind for quite a while. I really felt the need to speak up about it for once, like I pointed out in the beginning of this video. But with that being said, make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the situation? Please also be respectful towards me and other people, and let's have a discussion, because I'd love to talk some more about it with y'all. And obviously, if you want to help support me, if you want to make it possible for me to keep making high quality in-depth content like this, which I'm planning to put out a video like this pretty much every Sunday moving forward if possible, then yeah, please go take a look at my Patreon page at patreon.com/robingaming. You can support me for just $1 per month, or more if you can miss it, of course. You'll get a bunch of awesome rewards, like early access to these videos, my Q&A series, and you'll also show up in the credits like the people next to me who I want to thank for supporting me right now. But like I said, your support truly is needed so I can keep making videos like this. So if you enjoy what I do, go take a look. But with that being said, thanks for watching everybody, and I hope to see you again next time.